started Leather and Lark and I'm 82 pages into it. So I've read the first little bit, gotten into the story. This one's like closer to 400 pages, I think. 380-ish, so a little bit longer. It has been a while since I read Butcher and Blackbird. I mean, it was this year, right? Like I'm pretty sure I read it in 2024, but it just feels like it was so long ago. And this is the second book in a trilogy, but it's a romance series, so it's like a spin-off of a different couple in this book. So I'm not going to spoil anything about Butcher and Blackbird in this video. I will just be talking about this book and not even spoiling this book, just general. So no worries for anyone trying to avoid any spoilers. But yeah, it feels like it's been so long since I read Butcher and Blackbird. I'm like struggling to remember everything that happened in that book, which you don't need to know everything. This is featuring characters who are in the first book, who are like secondary characters, and there's some connecting pieces and things that are helpful to try to remember, but I don't know. So far, I'm like, this could kind of be read as a standalone. It's not that big of a deal. What this book is about is these two characters who are not named Leather and Lark. There is a Lark. Lark is the female. The male is named Lachlan, and I think he owns a leather shop, so I guess that's why it's Leather. The series is kind of about like three brothers, and so there's one brother in the first book, Lachlan is another brother, and then there's another brother who I think the third book will be about. This is looking to be a sort of enemies to fake marriage to lovers situation, just based on the synopsis of this. If you don't know anything about Butcher and Blackbird, it was a very talked about book. It's like a dark romance about two serial killers who kill bad people, and they enter into an annual competition where they see who can kill the bad guy first, sort of thing, and then they end up falling in love. Very gruesome, lots of trigger warnings, lots of just like graphic, gross things. This book seems to be following the same vein, given some things that have already happened, and then the extensive list of content warnings in the beginning of this one as well. I really had a fun time with Butcher and Blackbird. I gave that book 5 stars because I just never knew where it was going, and that's one of my favorite experiences to have with a book, is what I'm finding about myself, is I like unpredictable stories. I've read so many stories. I know common beats and common plot points. I want to be surprised. I want to be taken on a journey where I don't know what's going to happen, and that book did that for me, and I liked it, and I had a lot of fun with it. I'm kind of glad I put a big gap between reading Butcher and Blackbird and reading this book, because I don't like when my previous opinion of a series, like, it makes me disappointed in the next book, and it's been long enough that I feel like I'm approaching this pretty fresh, and I have had to remind myself of some things that do play a little bit of a part in this book. But anyways, how I'm feeling about it so far, I do think it is a little bit slower paced than Butcher and Blackbird was. I'm 82 pages in, and it's taking a while just to build up the context and the background of the story. There's also not as fun of a game element to it. I feel like that's what I really liked about Butcher and Blackbird, is they were competing against one another, and that was just fun. That was a fun way to drive the story forward. In this one, these two characters, Lark and Lachlan, end up meeting in a chance scenario on a Halloween night, and the encounter doesn't go great. And then a year later, they end up running into each other again. They don't realize who the other one is. They're immediately attracted to each other, and then they realize who they are, and then they're like, oh my god, this is horrible because I had a horrible interaction with you and now I'm attracted to you, but like, oh my god, I'm gonna pretend like that didn't happen. And the context of this book that you get from the synopsis is Lark comes from this highly known family that works in some sketchy business, and there's a killer who's killing some people around them, and they don't know who it is. And basically, because of that, without giving all the details away, Lark finds herself having to enter a fake relationship, fake marriage with Lachlan. And now they're like enemies. They've had this bad encounter. They don't like each other, and they're having to do this fake marriage for reasons, which is always really fun. I like fake dating. I like enemies to lovers. So I feel like all the tropes are here for me. I like the silly vibe of these books, that they're like graphic and comedic and dark, but not like heavy dark. It's heavy, but the way it's written about is kind of like a dark comedy, and I like dark comedy. So I'm having a good time with this so far. I feel like it's gonna fly by, and I'll let you know how it's going as I continue to read more. Midway update on Leather and Lark, and I don't have too much more to say about it that's going to be very different from my first impressions, other than, you know, I'm still having a good time. I do think this is a pretty slow book, and there's just something about the way this author writes where I just am not as accustomed to where we're gonna go. Like the pacing, the plotting, I don't feel like they are as predictable as some other romance books. Maybe it might just be I don't read a lot of romance. It might just be I haven't been reading a lot lately, period, and so everything just feels a little surprising to me. But I don't know, there's just something about her writing style that I like, where I'm just in the story and I'm having a good time and I don't really care where it goes. I'm just enjoying it, and I like the humor, I like the characters. It's a good time. There's a lot of unrealisticness to this one in particular because, you know, it's a fake marriage, and fake marriage is a pretty big deal and kind of hard to believe. So you do have to suspend your disbelief for this one. I don't really have a problem doing that because it's already a silly, goofy time in general, so that's fine. But yeah, I'm enjoying watching these two characters come together. The female main character, I don't have a lot of memory of her from the first book, but I feel like you learn some new things about her in this, and she feels different to me than I remembered her feeling, or I don't know. Like I just, it's been a long time since I read the first book, so maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't remember seeing her in the way that you're seeing her in this book, which is cool and interesting, and I like her as a character. But another reason I'm glad I spaced out reading the first and the second book, because maybe that would have felt weird to me, a weird transition, I don't know. But yeah, all in all, having a good time, liking watching these characters go from enemies to lovers. The killer element of this, the fact that there's, you know, a killer on the hunt, is not playing as big of a role in the story as I thought it would at this point, but it does feel like now the second half is going to focus more on that. I felt like the first half was more about setting up this dynamic of the fake marriage, and now we are potentially going into shenanigan mode, which I like. I finished Leather and Lark last night, and oh boy, it was not good. It wasn't good. This was not a good book, but I didn't have a bad time with it. I don't know. It's a weird one. I mean, this was just not a very good follow-up to Butcher and Blackbird. It was so slow and the plot was just lacking. I know in the last update I was like, I don't know where it's gonna go, and that's because it didn't have a well-structured plot. Like, it didn't have a storyline to follow. This whole killer thread opens at the beginning, completely disappears, and then rushes its way back into the story right at the end. It just was not good. I can't say I had a terrible time with it though, because I am in a place where I just want to read things that are a little bit mindless as I'm getting back into reading. So this was the perfect time for me to read this book in order for me to have an experience with it where I didn't just think it was terrible. Honestly, I'm like, I could give this a 3-star because I had a fine time with it. But in reality, this is definitely a 2-star or below in terms of quality. But yeah, I think I'm personally gonna give it a 3-star because that was my personal experience with it. It is nowhere near as fun as Butcher and Blackbird. Everything about Butcher and Blackbird is like toned down, I feel, in this book. And then of course this is a dark romance, so once it started getting to the sex scenes, those are of a different variety than what I'm used to reading in the romance I typically read. This is a very slow burn romance, and for me, I love a really like romantic, intimate, like finally breaking of the tension. And this is a dark romance, and so when you finally break that tension, it's just like really intense and like not super romantic, just like carnal energy, which is how Butcher and Blackbird was too. But everything about that book I just enjoyed more than this one. Would I recommend this book? I don't know. I don't know that I particularly recommended Butcher and Blackbird either. That was just something that I had fun with. I still kind of had fun with this just because I do already like the series. And there's gonna be one more book in the trilogy, and I definitely think I'm gonna read it, but I cannot deny that they're just not very good. But that's okay. It's kind of like 50 Shades of Grey. Like when I read 50 Shades of Grey, I was like, this is not quality, but something about it is intriguing to me. This is definitely even worse than that. But the series in itself has this sort of intrigue because of how it's like, you know, serial killers and romance and just dark comedy, like all these, you know, heightened things that just make it something that's still entertaining, I guess. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a 3, but just know I do think it is worse than that. I just had somewhat of a good time with it because I just needed something easy breezy to read, and this was easy breezy. The next book I read, I think, is gonna have a much different tone. I started If I Stopped Haunting You, and I gave it a good 50 pages, 59 pages, a good chunk of it. I don't like it and I'm gonna DNF it. It's just not capturing my attention at all. This is supposed to be an enemies to lover romance between these two writers who have this big blow up situation, and then they both end up going on this writing retreat in Scotland, and they're staying in this Scottish castle that is haunted, and then there's some ghost stuff going on, so it's kind of like cozy horror meets enemies to lover romance. I don't care about these characters, any of them. They just don't feel very real to me. And I don't feel like these first 50 pages have done much to really build anything or drive the plot forward. It kind of just feels like it kept repeating the same thing over and over again, that these characters are supposed to dislike each other, but already within the first 50 pages, they're having some romantic vibes. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I need tension. I need this to like really draw itself out. This is too quick for me. And I just was not getting into the writing style. I just wasn't having a good time, and I don't have time to read books I don't want to read right now. So gonna be a pretty quick DNF, which is unfortunate because this is one of my favorite covers like ever. I think the cover of this is so good. The colors, the shadows, even these little marks that kind of make it look like the book has been bent a little bit. I just really, really love the cover. I was not getting the vibes from the book though. So unfortunately a quick DNF, and it seems like a lot of people agree. I was looking through Goodreads reviews. The average rating of this is pretty low. It's like a pretty low 3, and I'm seeing a lot of DNFs and low ratings and a lot of complaints. I think this is a debut novel, so maybe it's just some of the kinks of a debut novel. It's also hard when you have a cover this great. Like, I'm expecting greatness because this is a great cover, and it just was not capturing my attention. I don't know what I'm gonna read next, but I'll let you know when I know. Hood of this hoodie is so big, and I feel like I'm like the evil Kermit meme. I decided yesterday to start a Grim Reaper's Guide to something. Catching a criminal. What is it? A Grim Reaper's Guide to Catching a Killer? Yes, Catching a Killer. This is by Maxi Dara. It came out October 1st, and I had an arc through NetGalley, and I'm late because we're well past October 1st, but I'm reading it now. And this is the start of a new mystery series. And the concept of this is that there's this woman who works for this department called Scythe, which is secure collection, yielding, and transportation of human essences. So she is basically a Grim Reaper, and her department deals with deaths by natural causes. So her job is when people die of natural causes, she goes, she collects the soul, and she takes it to where it needs to go. On her latest job, she is assigned to go collect the soul of this 17-year-old boy named Connor. She goes, and his soul is MIA. It's not there. So she has to track down his soul. And then when she does find him, he's like, I did not die of natural causes. Someone killed me. And she's like, well, this is weird because my department never messes up. Souls are never missing. And he's saying that he thinks that someone who killed him is someone from her department. She only has a limited amount of time, it's like 40 days or so, to get the souls to where they need to go. Otherwise, the soul becomes stuck and becomes a ghost, which is like unheard of for her job. So she is under a lot of pressure to help him solve what happened to him and to help convince him, I guess, to go where he needs to go. In her own life, she is also going through a divorce. She is, I think, in her 40s or close to her 40s. Maybe she's like 38, and she's going through a divorce, and she also just found out that she is pregnant. So she's got a lot going on in her own life, and she's got this mystery going on, and overall the book just has a really funny tone. It very much fits the expectations of what you think you're getting by looking at the cover. This is more of a cozier mystery with some more comedy elements to it, and I am really enjoying it so far. I feel like this could be a really good success. I am very early in the story. I'm within like the first 15% or so far. So these are just very early first impressions, but so far I really like the setup. I really like the characters. I really like the tone. I really like the concept. I'm just having a good time. I don't typically read books following pregnant people, is just something I'm kind of realizing, especially in a mystery that's just not as common. So that element, I am like, where is that going to go? And how is that going to be part of the story? And is it going to be a big part of the story? I don't know. So that's the one thing I'm a little bit unsure about, but otherwise, I really like it. Midway update on the Grim Reaper book. I am still enjoying it. The pregnancy element is more of a story than I'm personally interested in, you know, like I don't know, I don't feel like it's adding anything for her to be pregnant. It's just like another thing that's on her mind while she's going through this experience, and it's like bringing her back, dealing with this whole thing with the guy she's getting divorced from and him being around a lot more because now they're gonna have a baby together. It just doesn't feel as needed in the story for what I'm looking for. So as predicted, or as I thought it might, that part is a little bit like, I don't know about this. But otherwise the story is still going pretty good. She's working with the teen to try to figure out what happened. She's been pursuing some things. There's been some danger introduced. I feel like it's going, you know, all the ways that a mystery should. I don't know if it still has 5-star energy. It's going to depend on the second half for sure. It feels a little bit mild. I don't know how else to explain it other than just mild. It just feels a little mild, which always, like a cozier, funnier, dark comedy kind of mystery like this always is a little more mild than something dark and gruesome. I don't want dark and gruesome, but maybe just a little more intensity on solving the case. And maybe that's just because she's also thinking about things like being pregnant and going to work. And I'm like, I don't really care about all those things. Let's just like pursue the case. But all in all, still a good time flying through the book. And I think I'm gonna go finish it and then I'll let you know my final thoughts. I finished reading the Grim Reaper book and I had a good time with this story overall. I do think I'm going to end up giving it a 3-star rating because in the second half of the story, I don't feel like it picked up my enjoyment. It just like maintained it, went down a little bit. For what the story is, it was a good, fun, lighthearted time. I found it to personally be a little bit predictable and a little underwhelming, or like almost too cozy for me. I was looking for something a little bit more intense, you know, and it just felt so mild the whole time. I feel like mild is just such a good word to use to describe the book. It's cute, and it is, you know, if you're in the fall mood, you're looking for an easy read. It kept my attention the whole time. This is the setup of a series, and I can see how it's setting up for the next story. I was worried because as I was getting to like the 85% point, the 90% point, I'm like, wow, we're about to wrap this story up really quick and then you're gonna have to set up for a sequel, and what if they leave us on a cliffhanger? But they don't. They do resolve the story in this first book, and then it kind of sets you up for an idea of what the next one could be exploring. And I feel like there's gonna be some different sides to some characters that you'll maybe see as the series goes on. I don't particularly feel like I'm really interested in continuing on in this series. I have become more of a mystery series person, but this one is not intriguing enough for me to pick up the next book unless the synopsis comes out and it somehow sounds really, really good. But I don't think I'll be picking it up. At least I won't be rushing to pick it up as soon as it's out. It was still a good book. Like, it was fine. I enjoyed it. 3 stars, still a good rating. But, you know, I've read a lot of really good mysteries this year, a lot of really good cozy, funny mysteries, a lot of really good mysteries that are part of a series or kick off a series, and in comparison, this one I thought was just okay. So that puts a wrap on the reading vlog. I think I'm gonna call it here. I ended up reading 3 books, one of which I ended up DNFing. I feel like that was the right choice for me. I feel like I was probably gonna be disappointed by this. Leather and Lark, while it was no literary masterpiece, at least gave me an enjoyable experience. And then the same can be said for my Grim Reaper book. So mostly a pretty good week of reading. If anything, I feel like this has really helped me reinvigorate my reading spirit, kickstart my reading spirit a little more, just like completing some books, because I was reading such a long book for so long with the Throne of Glass book I was reading earlier in the month, that now it just feels good to like finish some books. I feel like picking up some more. So that's been a good experience in itself. Let me know down in the comments below if you've read any of these books and what you think of them. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye. I forgot to show you my ghost earrings, and I feel like that's a very important component.